Hello everyone, this is Juana Maria with Illinois WorkNet, and we have Dee Reinhardt here, and we're really excited to have you on the webinar. We're going to do a quick sound check to make sure everyone is able to hear us. So you have a little guy up at the top of the screen. Go ahead and raise your hand if you can hear us. Very good. Sounds like we're coming through loud and clear. That's always a good sign. We sometimes have issues, so very happy to know that people are hearing us okay. If you do have any problems, you can go ahead and call the conference call number. I have a little note up there for you as to how to get that information. Beneath the note that we have posted, we have a chat, and I see people are introducing themselves. This is a great place to really collaborate and integrate. You're going to have a lot of different people on this webinar that have a different level of expertise, and some of the most useful information sometimes comes from your own peers. So go ahead and interact with everyone, ask questions. This is a great place for you to interact with us as well as we're going through the PowerPoint and going through the presentation, as well as ask questions. We'll have a Q&A portion at the end of the webinar, but you're more than welcome and encouraged actually to ask questions because it helps us keep it relevant and let you know or let us know what to emphasize on more. Beneath that you have a file share, and this is just a place for you to be able to download the documents. So for instance, the PowerPoint from today, you have the PowerPoints from the previous webinar for those of you that are rejoining us. You have a couple of different tips on there, so you'll have a social media audit, as well as some other resources that we'll include in the webinar. We really wanted to make sure to get you something extra that you would get, for being on instead of kind of downloading or watching the archive. So to the right of that, we have two polling pods, and this is just for us to kind of know where you're at. It's always going to be different on every webinar, so we don't want to assume. So we want to know where you're at in the process, and then what your level of expertise is, so we kind of know how much meat we want to put on this and to what extent our details should be. So with that said, I'm going to go ahead and switch screens and get you all started. What you'll notice is beneath the PowerPoint you have a web links box, and this is where I'll show and share some of the resources as we're going through the information. So with that said, this webinar today is really building off of the previous webinar. So we really worked on developing our strategy and kind of creating this game plan on how we want to approach social media. And today it's more about the basics, right? And so as mentioned through the different promotions, it's really about helping you understand the key components of what your image is. And part of that has to do with your message. The type of resources that are available to you to make these types of connections, especially with social media. We work on this course in partnership with Southern Illinois University Center for Workforce Development and Education, and part of the challenge of doing a social media course as well as a webinar is that it's always changing. And so with all of your best intentions, you could build something to stay, to have this shelf life. But unfortunately, and for those of you that are on Facebook right now, you see that things are changing almost every day. So what we're trying to do on this webinar is really arm you with the resources to stay current and to know who to follow, to know what to be in tune with so that you can continue to be able to arm yourself with the right resources. And we see that we actually have a couple folks from SIU. So very cool. Thank you so much for making it on. The last bit is obviously once you've gone through this entire very exhaustive process of your message and your pitch and your strategy, you need to learn how to measure. So we'll talk about some of the resources, and I can't emphasize this enough. And we'll have a whole entire webinar on this, but it's really about creating that system so you have the benchmarks, you've got things you're working towards. So with that said, I'm going to go ahead and move forward. I want to show you who we are, just in case you're curious. And so my name, of course, is Juana Maria, and I am with Illinois WorkNet, and we are part of Southern Illinois University Carbondale Center for Workforce Development. and education. And then we have Dee Reinhardt here, and she totally stole the coolest um, title that I could think of. And so she's the idea builder, and she was a part of our previous webinar series and really, really instrumental in helping us kind of build this foundation as social media was first coming out. So we thought it would only make sense to be able to include her on the first part and then create this foundation for you. So I'm going to go ahead and include and introduce Dee here so that she can have a little bit of time to introduce herself. So Dee, if you want to go ahead and let our audience know who you are and kind of what you do.
Hi, I'm Dee Reinhardt, as she said, and I am the principal of Time to Market. I came from a workforce development background and decided that it was time to try and do some of this for small businesses and not-for-profits. So I'm working on helping others build their social media presence or their digital presence, and I specialize primarily in LinkedIn, but I help everybody with all of the networks that are there. Google Plus is a new one, so that's what that little G with the plus symbol is. Pinterest is a huge new big tool. YouTube gets 2 billion searches a day. So if you're not using some of these tools, you might want to investigate them, and I'm sure that they will be covered in future webinars.
So we really wanted to make sure to give Dee a chance to emphasize some of the different things that she's experienced, because she's the person on the ground kind of interacting with the various organizations, businesses. She also comes from the workforce world, so she does really understand how to conceptualize some of these things. So feel free to reach out to her. She'll be a tremendous resource for your organization. So today's webinar is really, as I mentioned, about creating images, making connections, and then measuring that impact. So we'll get started. And part of this, as I kind of walk you through this resource, is that creating a program image is far more than just the image. It's also about the message. So here I have a really interesting kind of vintage poster, the Coca-Cola. I figured it's safe to use Coca-Cola. And it's so much more than kind of, in the past we've talked about the icons and the avatars. It's about that entire package. So how are you able to create this brand for yourself? And so a lot of that, what it kind of walks you through is really, and we'll do this today, is walking through learning how to be human and authentic, really walking through logos, pictures versus avatars. We'll have a whole portion dedicated to kind of the brand and timeline and the type of options available now with Facebook. And then once you've got that started, it's really about keeping it consistent. So this part I think is probably the most difficult for certain people, because they get really, really encouraged and engaged, and then all of a sudden, as everything else works, it gets really busy, and then people forget about certain things, and so you'll have this like up and down roller coaster type interaction. And so part of that, and the last bit that I have here, is about leaving a legacy. You can't leave a legacy if you're not going to be there. So we'll walk you through some of the essentials on continuing on with those types of interactions. So what do I mean by being transparent? I think this is pretty much a given for most people, but it's really about what is the face or the voice of your department or agency, and that in itself, and especially, and I make a lot of references right now with timeline, because this is kind of the latest thing that's blown up in everyone's faces. It's really about how do I utilize the various options I have to highlight my organization, for instance, Illinois WorkNet, and then be able to do so in a way that really includes all the different things that we do. And I know that a lot of these different organizations have all types of things that you do. You do employer services, or maybe you do various classes and courses. So it's really tough to be able to capture all of that into one type of image. And so I've included some questions that we can begin kind of mapping that out. And so the one question is, you want to think about, do you want to do separate things? So for instance, separate accounts for the different types of services or products. Do you want to be able to start different pages to kind of launch different messages for what you do? And if so, is that a really realistic way to kind of approach this? Are you going to be able to maintain that? And part of the last webinar was really identifying your champions, your staff that's going to be able to speak to these various different communication goals that you may have. So in our social media strategy webinar, we talked about, if your goal is to promote, who's going to be doing that type of promotion? If your goal is to recruit, how are you going to communicate those talent needs? And so a lot of this begins with really kind of identifying how am I going to speak about the things that I do, and then who's going to be doing the speaking. The second part is about logos, avatars, pictures, and we have all types of things that we can include in here. But this is about what you want people to see. And so this is really important, especially with all the search engine optimizations. Your image and your bio, for instance, with Twitter, is what's going to come up when people look for you. So can you tell them who you are, why, what you do and why it matters within, the 140 characters or within that image that you're going to be putting out there into the universe of all things internet. And so the questions that I have here is, it's about people, not logos. So how do you kind of bring your guard down? It's about managing, that image. And so if your organization changes or if your brand changes, do you have things in place to really be able to articulate that? And then what will happen if, for instance, if you're using a photo of an individual, and we did an audit last webinar, and I think, what community college was it for?
Lake County, I believe.
So Lake County, and they had this one person, which was their PR person, doing it was their photo on Twitter, talking about the college on behalf of the college. And the question here is, what are you going to do when that person leaves? So Dee, for instance, was the marketing coordinator for her local workforce area, and I haven't checked back with KTD, but
I still post for them on occasion.
yeah. So it's really about, understanding, once you get this stuff up there, it's going to be a snowball effect, right? You're going to be building. You're constantly building. Social media is all about traction. So what are you going to do when these individuals leave, right? So that's part of your program image. The other part is about the legacy, right? So what I've added here is it really should reinforce your organization and your message and what you're really trying to get out there, And so for you, and so I'll give you the example of Illinois WorkNet. We're all about, plugging people into career pathways, giving people information on how to get into their career, work readiness, and all of these things, they're different topics, but it all reinforces our program image, which is employment and training, resources and services. And so the questions that I have here is, what kind of information should you share? And we'll give you some really great examples on that in the couple of slides following this. And also the protocols. And this goes back to really your social media strategy and creating that policy. And that really has to start from the beginning. And for those people that were on the previous webinar, we did an entire case where people, were presented with different challenges and asked, how do you prevent this issue? What would you do to kind of fix the problem? And it was really interesting to see, because it's very reflective of what people deal with on a day-to-day basis in different organizations. So the last bit is about keeping it consistent. And so as I mentioned, people will basically stop connecting if it seems like you're not, if one day I'm talking about social media and then the next day I'm talking about, civil rights, or, it's a completely different message that you're sending out there. Or if I start talking about politics and my opinion about politics, it's not going to be supportive of that legacy that I'm trying to create. So the questions I have here is what you'll talk about, what are the topics on your list, and we really mean lists, and a big part of this is going to be about helping you learn who to follow and learn where to get some of these topics based on keyword searches throughout the various social network sites. And then, of course, is how are you going to keep track of what you're posting and what people are saying, and are you going to be responding? So we'll have a question for you on that. Oh, there we go. So the next part is, here's some examples. So we've gone through kind of what you do, and so what I thought would be really helpful is to be able to go through kind of the key points. So things you should post about. So for instance, the first one that I added on here is post about your group. So if you have a company or if you have an organization or if you have a firm, people follow you because they want to know more about this group or about what's going on. And part of being human online is being able to share that stuff. So we saw some really great examples, for instance, with one of the companies that we were looking at last time, and it was a transportation company. And they had event photos from their team building exercises, or they had different types of promotional events that maybe they were at a conference or they were at a job fair. People want to see that stuff because they hear about you, they read your stuff, but they really want to have a way to connect. So the examples that I gave you here, tweet pictures about fun stuff that you're doing, post things on Facebook, informational updates, product enhancements, maybe services. You can post things on YouTube. There's a lot of instructional material being added to YouTube as a way to, and we talked about this in the previous webinar, where you can do a promotion, you can make it personal, it's kind of how you get your message across to your different users. And then the last bit is to really be able to, you can use the different apps, you can do it on LinkedIn as well as all over the various sites, is to be able to upload your presentation. So for instance, we do tons of webinars, we post it on our website, but I tweet about it. I can upload it to my LinkedIn profile and let you know, kind of put your slides up. So this is one way that you can talk about you as a company, you as that program. The next one is, and I have my thinking cap there, it's about thought leadership. And what I mean by thought leadership is about really, really creating this plan about the things that you know. And what's really interesting, and especially within this market, is that a lot of people are really good at the various industries that they've been in. So when we talk about laid off workers, for instance, they've had 30 years of experience in manufacturing, or they have had 30 years of experience in the auto industries. And it's really about how do you promote your personal brand. And I'll include a link in this about some really cool videos and really cool articles I've found along the way, because this is not just about companies, this is also about individuals promoting themselves as this subject matter expert. And this is huge, and this will be really, really huge, for instance, with blogs, because people are going to Google you. If you're looking for a job, they're going to Google you, they're going to find you, right? And if you have a blog that talks about efficiency processes within manufacturing or advanced manufacturing, or if you're talking about various trainings, or for instance with Dee, she does all types of workshops and different classes, and you're talking about that in that blog, it just reaffirms, one, your experience, two, that you are who you say you are on that resume or that application that you have. So this is huge for both individuals as well as companies. And so the examples I have here is share a link with the latest white paper. We're all working on stuff. We're constantly writing things. If you've just finished a video, for instance, we finished a bunch of our assessment videos, let people know. Let them know where to find it. Let them know how to access it. We're working on our NOB conference presentation, and so we're in a fury to get all this information out about our workshop that we're doing in DC. And this is This is a huge thing for Illinois WorkNet. So we're tweeting it out, letting people know when our session is starting, especially for those following us. It's good because a lot of them, especially in the workforce world, they're going to be there. So, so it's a good way to kind of connect with people.
And you want to put it on more than one channel and more than once.
Right. The other really important thing that I found here was really kind of, not that you don't know this, but like you're like, oh, that's such a great idea. To be able to upload your pictures with Flickr and then tag keywords within that is essential for your search engine optimization. And it was when I had a moment where I was like, oh, duh. That's exactly what you're supposed to do. And what this does is it just is another method for you to bring that traffic or that search or that referral back to you. And you have to be really, really clever because I feel like everyone in the world is kind of trying to get onto that first page of the Google search. So this is one more useful way to be able to do that. The last one is about employee videos, advices, and all that on YouTube. So these are some examples of thought leadership, and we don't have the caps, but we can figure out a way if people are needing these caps to get that started. So I thought that was very cute. The last bit is obviously news, and so what I've updated here is about your updates, right? So the things you're promoting, maybe you're looking for a new person, maybe you just hired a new person and you want everyone in your network to welcome them on. It depends on the type of interest you have or activities. And so here for us, it's really about, Illinois WorkNet has something like 1,200 partners statewide. So if we had a new team member, we could send out a note saying, hey everybody, this is what's going on. This person just came on, welcome them on to the team, right? So the examples I have are team members, right, and or videos or different white papers, the different initiatives. And so when we were promoting our Illinois Pathways initiative, we were sending out news feeds and e-blasts and promotions so that people really understood kind of this is what we're doing in Illinois, this is how it matters on the national front and the different standards. And then this is how it relates to you. So news feeds and RSS feeds are really, really important. Post pictures on Facebook, and then, of course, presentations and slides and whatnot. The last one, and this is probably, I think, the one that people have the hardest time with, is really about feedback. And some people may say, well, what does this have to do with my program image? And it actually has everything to do with your program image, because the more questions you ask from people, the more you really interact and engage, the more you'll get back. So it's kind of like when we're all in class, people say, well, you get what you give. This is where that is with feedback. The more questions you ask, and we talk about crowdsourcing all the time, and you have different options to crowdsource with social media, but this is really about asking people, what do you think? I was putting together a feature rotator for our reentry candidates page. And so I put a poll on our Facebook, and I asked, which of these words, and I wrote something like motivated, engaged, encouraged. I used all these different words. I said, which of these words, trigger, or define someone that's starting fresh or having a second chance. And people pulled in, and they had all these great things to add, say, oh no, that would never mean reentry candidate to me, right? And it was a really interesting way to get this feedback, to be able to say, oh, okay, because sometimes what we think is going to work doesn't necessarily have the same impact. So the examples I gave here, questions about favorite aspects, there may be even challenges, especially in the workforce world. What do you struggle most with your interviews? What do you struggle most, for instance, with your resume development and the various questions? Maybe you've been laid off for a while, or maybe you were a stay-at-home mom. And people ask these types of questions all the time, so it's about what people care about most. And you won't know that unless you ask. And then, obviously, a lot of this has to do with your blogs as well. So it's being able to reconnect with your audience, and it's about as we always talk about this on workNet, a community of users where you're really reflecting the information that people are sharing. So if people are saying, I'm having a really hard time and I need more webinars on resume building, then that's what we're going to do. And we'll focus, we'll regroup and realign and focus on what people are saying is needed most. And then the industry-related content. So a lot of our focus in Illinois was on the key sectors, and now we've realigned that to fit the pathways that we're trying to build towards. So super interesting way to be able to say, okay, this is what I think based on our users. And with workNet, we have 200,000 plus active users. So it's a really great place to ask questions. The last bit is about sharing your success stories. And me personally, I can't think of success stories without thinking about WeWorks, because it's this massive campaign that we're all doing on every local workforce level, right? And a lot of people understand that this really is important for different communities, and it's amazing when you do talk to someone and they understand the relevance, but it's also super important to get that out to the masses that maybe don't have access to the type of services or have not had the opportunity. So for instance here, I have examples about inviting customers to post discussion topics or stories, and so we have that on Illinois WorkNet where you can post your success story with the various trainings that you have. You can tweet once people have posted, and we have hundreds on Illinois WorkNet. You can go ahead to illinoisworknet.com and just click on WeWorks, and you'll see all the different stories by congressional district, by local workforce area. You can do a zip code search and really have an impression of how people have used these funds. So super encouraging. And I always read these stories, and I'm like, wow, that makes me feel so good that I can contribute to something like that. And then asking people to submit videos, and a lot of our workforce areas do a good job with the various videos that they post, because let's be serious, people don't read anymore. Hence all the pictures even in this PowerPoint. I felt like, what's the point of putting a lot of text when you could be able to share with images or videos and really emphasize what you're doing and show people that your program or your initiative is really creating an impact. So I thought those are really good examples to get people thinking and started. The other thing that I just couldn't help myself, because it's kind of the topic of the week, is I wanted to talk about obviously the new timeline, be able to create an image for yourself and to be able to really highlight what you do as a program. So what I'm going to do is I have two options here. And the first one, I wanted to show you Facebook, Walmart's Facebook, and then Macy's. And the reason I picked these two, one, because they're really cool, and I really like them, but also because I think the greatest challenge for all of us is we do so many things, and it's really hard to put one picture up there of all the things that you do. So I wanted to show you what that all meant. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. And you're going to go ahead and let me know if you can see it. I'm going to switch over. Okay. And so the first one I'm going to show you is Walmart. Let me know when you can see my screen. Okay. So, and we'll give you complete details on the specs of what timeline means. So timeline is this new view that you will have you're forced to upgrade to, whether you're an individual or a page, to be able to utilize kind of the new way that Facebook is organized. So what you'll notice is here at the top with Walmart, what's interesting is you can get everything at Walmart. Everything but maybe get married, right? Right, so the point here is that There's plenty of things you can't do with your cover page. And so Dee can definitely, and we had an interesting conversation with, I was updating my cover for my nonprofit that I'm a part of, and she's like, oh, you can't do that, Juana. You can't like us on your cover. So she'll give us some tips on how it works. But what you'll notice here is that this is really about their image, right? So they have your receipts, so that's always about savings. They have their logo as their icon here. And then they have the different things. You know, they don't sell babies at Walmart, so why do they have a baby there, right? But this all encompasses kind of what they have as products or services. And so what's interesting with Timeline, you'll notice it's two different pages. You can bookmark things, so they talk about Oreo here. They talk about what types of things, so if people are talking about them, it'll show up on their page, so there's definitely an option to integrate with that, which is really great, because some companies don't do that at all. It'll show you who they like. It goes down and it starts talking about, maybe, you know, when you check out at the register, they'll tell you, hey, this is on special today. Well, this is kind of the same thing that's going on this image. Hey, by the way, shrimps are on special today. And then what's really cool, and I love, I'm going to scroll down, the coolest part, I think, about Timeline is being able to highlight. And when you highlight, it takes the entire page. And what you'll notice is this all becomes a major infograph, right? And so you get to kind of manipulate the view or what the viewer's eyes hit with the things and the way that you place things on your page. So that's Walmart, and then I really quickly wanted to show you Macy's, if Macy's wants to load. I guess Macy's won't load. So what I'll do is I'm going to go ahead and now move it over. Dee has a couple of different examples that she can use to kind of walk you through what this all looks like.
All right. So this is what people, in most cases, if they have not switched to Timeline yet, will see. They would see a welcome page from somebody, and it has the arrow pointing off to where the like button would be. You can have a long avatar, which highlights some of the key points that you want people to know. First of all, your website address, your phone number, and if you have any other locations. On the welcome page, you can actually make hot links. So if you hover over this button, and if you can see in the very bottom right-hand corner, if I move my mouse, it'll go away. It shows that I'm linking to their website. And if I go to the ALSIP location, it would take me to the Google map of that location. And then you can still, by scrolling down a little bit, get to the wall. Now, Heinz Lumber approached us because they only have 35 fans. And if you notice, I don't know if I can go back far enough, but the last time they posted before I started working with them was July of 2011. So what this point all brings is you're not going to build your fan base if you don't give them information. And if you don't ask them to share your page with their friends, you're not going to build your relationship. So there's a call to action that comes into play here. This banner across the top will be going away, but what you could do prior to Timeline coming into place was make these images so that you had a consistent look about your wall page. Again, that's if people are coming back to your wall. You need to do things to drive them to your wall or drive them to your website. What I want to show you real quickly now is my own Timeline upgrade that I did. So when you come to my page, this is the Timeline cover photo. What you cannot do in Timeline cover photo is have any direct information like your phone number, your website. You cannot ask them to like you. So this is doing what you can do. but it didn't say anything about your avatar not having a website address in it. So that spots here on the top. The first spot will always be your photos. You also have this about you information that will give you what your business is, where you're located, what the phone number is, what the open till 5, if you're open till 5. And then if you click on the about, it will give them all of that information that used to be in your info tab. You can also now put a welcome. Sorry about the audio, folks. You can also put your welcome page here in a tab. And when you click on that, you actually get 810 pixels of advertising space. And each of these little symbols on the side can all become clickable. The logo is clickable. I can drive people to my website, and so that allows people to get what they could have gotten from your welcome page, but you actually have more geographic territory to use on that. And then, if you want to go back, you just click on the name up at the top. What Juana was saying about your posts, if you go to the star and highlight, you can bookmark that post. So if you want to highlight it, let me go to a photo here. Say I want to highlight this infographic here. If I highlight it, it takes it all the way across the page.
And by the way, for people that I see that people are having issues hearing or skipping, that may have to do with your connection. So just go ahead and call the conference call number. That's why we have that up there, so you don't have any issues with the audio.
If you've got something important that you want to share, you would highlight this and make it the full width. It works especially well with graphics that you put in there. I'm going to unhighlight that. What I did was I took, in February, I took the banner that I had up, okay, and I made it the full width. The bookmark aspect that Juana mentioned was something that you can do, and it only lasts a week at a time. So if you want to highlight something, like say you're having a special for the week, you would bookmark it up in the top, and then make sure that you either bookmarked it again or reposted it. What that allows is it stays at the top, so that if you're posting something on Monday that you want people to remember, it stays there until Friday or Saturday.
It's just about positioning your message. So it'll be the first thing that comes up when something gets loaded. So like, for instance, the towel was bookmarked. And so that was probably done about a week ago or so, and so that's why it's on there.
Right.
So these are just some important things to, we're going to go ahead and switch over to show you kind of what it all means once you do create these images. I'm going to go ahead and go back to my PowerPoint now. When you do create these images, because it's really, really important to know how to manipulate that with the tools that you have. And I'm sure Dee has some great examples of kind of you taking somebody from, a bad spot and then kind of the best practices maybe?
Right. I had a client approach me that was really concerned about the fact that they did not have any presence, that they were just not getting any reaction, and they wanted to find out a way to do it the best way possible. So what we did was, first of all, we worked on their web page and optimized it, and I took them from a search engine optimization number of 49% to 93, 94%. It varies depending on what day you go in and check. But it actually will, it's based on what words you put around a picture, how you tag your pages, whether or not you have inbound links coming in from your Facebook page or your Twitter feed, or any of those other items that we've been talking about with the social media. So we want people to drive from point A to point B, and that might be from your blog to your website. It might be working in between all of those aspects. And a lot of times you might start with a Facebook page and you have 0. So the other day, in the morning to 35 fans by 5 o'clock in the afternoon, just by posting in the right places. Within a week, we were at 55 fans. And just to let you people know, on average, the average number of fans for a Facebook page is 150, and especially if you're a local organization. So if you have 3,000 fans or 3 million fans, you're a major brand. Don't feel bad if you only have 175. You're above average at that point.
Very cool. So as Dee was talking, I was adding some links, and Jeannie beat me to the punch and added that cool infographic that she actually shared with me. And part of that infographic I've actually added here, so you have as a reference, and it covers the specs of your cover, your icons. There's lots of really great apps that you can use, kind of to do what Dee showed you on hers, iframes. What you can do with your wall and different messages, and then what people think. And so I wanted to take this opportunity to ask you, so what do you think about timelines? And even in our own shop, we're all kind of divided. So I'm going to give you a minute to just go ahead and tell us what you think. Clearly here, 56 like it, 43 dislike it, so I feel like it's almost like the debates right now.
Yeah.
So I'll give folks a minute to chime in.
Do you want to add short stack to the web links? Short stack is a really good tool to use to create your new welcome page, and they have optimized their better.
There you go. So we have Jeannie likes it. April likes it for business, but not necessarily for herself. We have Amy likes it. Eva is trying to like it. Nicole said that she hasn't switched over yet. Nice to see you on again, Nicole. We have, Richard asks, or he says that he is not sure about the personal brand development. So it's really interesting just to be able to kind of, I'm still unsure if I like it or not. I'm kind of back and forth.
I like it a lot. I think, especially for businesses, it gives you so much more real estate to use to develop your brand. And if you take it from Facebook to Twitter to your YouTube background to your website, I actually changed some things on my website to match what I had done on my Facebook page. So it's all about getting that same look so that people recognize you.
So it's going to take my food blogging to the next level, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So for those of you that that don't know, it is going to be changing. You're going to be forced. You're going to be bumped into it on the 31st. So be ready. And a big part of this, the reason I'm focusing so much on it, is just to help people be ready to switch over. Because like it or not, it's going to happen. So might as well make it look good. So moving on with that, I want to just take a minute and see if anybody has any questions. If not, we'll go through and go on to our next topic, which is making connections. I think Nicole asked, do you know what pages will look like if we don't make the changes ahead of time? Go ahead.
What happens is your icon, your little avatar will be there. You will have a blank spot at the top where your cover photo would be, and your timeline will shift to what you saw on my time to market timeline. So all of your posts will go into that zigzagging back and forth down the line, which is why they're calling it timeline.
Yeah.
And if you're worried about having things added in there that you don't really want added, timeline only goes back to where you started your Facebook experience. If you want to add when you graduated from high school, when you got married, when you were born, you have to add all of those things.
Right. And then Eva asks, how does timeline change what mobile users see? It doesn't seem that different if you're using Facebook on your phone.
No, it doesn't.
Yeah, no, it's not different. And I think it's just based on, and I'm sure, don't say that too loud, Eva. We may get an upgrade on our apps.
Yeah.
So I think we're all busy enough to try to keep up with the actual page. So yeah, Jeannie we just had a very long app conversation yesterday and all the changes. So moving forward, the next topic is really about making connections. And here I have an image of a bunch of tangled stuff, but it's not. I was trying to find a cool image that was similar to the LinkedIn maps, how we're all connected to one another. And part of making connections, and this is the part of the webinar that we really wanted to emphasize as your takeaway, right? And so go ahead and feel free to ask questions. The first part is microblogging. And we'll go ahead and give you some examples of what we mean by that. It's about social networks, so knowing to tap into the various networks. It's about even your email, so do you have the right things in your signature? Is there a call to action? I think a lot of people post a lot of things out there without asking for something in return or asking people to do something as a result. Blogs, RSS feeds, all the cool stuff, bookmarks, all the things that you can connect to. Aggregators, this is probably the biggest thing, and we'll go through some examples of that. And then the subject matter experts. And what I'm going to do is, unless people have questions, of course microblogging is Twitter, right? And everything similar to Twitter. Your status updates, your various messages you're sending out, those are microblogging options. Social networks are all, Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, all of those things. You have various options for blogs. We can have an entire conversation on blogs, and we'll do that as part of your communication plan. And then we had an entire kind of conversation dedicated to even the type of email that you use. People will really kind of judge you on that. Would you want to share?
Yes. Gmail is the only considered acceptable email that you can have other than your name at your company. So right now, if you're looking for a job, get a Gmail account, because Hotmail and Yahoo don't get it.
And it kind of, not ages you, but people will realize, because I feel like there's different generations that were really attached to their Hotmail, for instance. Or once in a while, I'll see an AOL.com email, and I'm just like, are they still around?
Yeah, they are.
AOL?
Yeah.
Talking about dial-up earlier, right?
Yeah.
So be really mindful of the impressions you're creating, even with the things that you use, right?
The other thing good about Gmail is so many people have it on their phone.
Right.
So that Live is kind of an unknown one at April. I know it's an MSN option, but it's not as recognizable. So many people realize that if you have a Gmail account, that you're technologically savvy, because if you've got Gmail, you probably have it on your phone too.
And honestly, the more relevant piece of why you should get Gmail, if you're running a business or an organization, something we came up with our team, all of your analytics, you're going to be using Google Analytics. You need a Google account to even get into your YouTube now.
Yes.
And so if you want to keep it simple, and I don't know about you all, but I have like 1,000,000 passwords and I just can't keep track of everything, make it easy for yourself, and this is just one more thing that you'll be able to tap into to have this dashboard. And so we'll have a conversation later on in the webinar about that, but it's really about keeping it simple. So I'm not like a pro anything. I'm not endorsing anybody's tool, but it's just a way to be able to keep relevant. So the first part about making connections is about the aggregators or the resources that you use. And so Dee and I had this long conversation when we were talking about, how do I keep this course and this webinar? The last one was 2 years ago. And since then, we all have grown and evolved into, the whole world is now a social media guru, have you noticed? And so it's really, really interesting to kind of see what people are promoting themselves at, but they all get it from the same place. So these places, and these are the things that you need to start following, and has some amazing white papers. So HubSpot has free webinars, lots and lots of concept papers, white papers, marketing, best practices. This is where I get my stuff. The key is you get stuff like once a day, so it's about creating a system to be able to filter that in. But how are you going to, Jeannie mentioned, she's like, much has changed since 2 years ago. Absolutely. Including our PowerPoints.
Yes.
So HubSpot is really kind of where all the gurus are on. The other thing I have is Mashable. I just can't tell you how grateful I am for Mashable. And there was a lot of the resources that we've mentioned here. There's this book that I've kind of used as my foundation or backboard to this webinar series. It's called Socialnomics, and it talks about in the world that we live in now, being a writer for the New York Times, which used to be this prestigious title to have, is no longer as cool as being a writer for Mashable. So for those of you that are unfamiliar, it's Mashable.com, and this is like the end-all, be-all for everything new. I'm sharing all my secrets with you now. Hopefully you'll come back. But everything new to social media and kind of the stories, tons of how-to guides, webinars, leading trending topics, anything and everything to do with staying current. We have Smart Briefs, and this is something that I like to call like my smoke break. So you get them in the morning when you start work, you get them during lunch, and then you get them towards the end of the day. And you could sign up, I think there's like 20 different topics. I have Smart Briefs for social media, for workforce, HR, careers. And so what you'll do is it's basically a news article aggregator that picks up all the topics that came up that day. So it's a daily thing, so maybe a little bit much.
But it also aggregates it over the course of the week. So if you just can't read everything every day, delete Mondays. You'll see many of the same articles on Tuesday's Smart Brief. So they kind of scroll them down.
Mm-hmm. And so highly encourage you to go ahead and get subscribed, and take a minute to just set your preferences the way you like it, because it will bombard your email, and you don't want to miss out, but you don't want to get bogged down with stuff that you may not want, right? The other one is Alltop, and I think this was our original favorite before we knew, so I don't know if you want to kind of go ahead and give them your feedback on that. But pretty much all the top stuff that you need to know about also aggregated and kind of based on what's trending and what's...
Well, and All Top is kind of the blog world.
Mhm.
And then you just told me about one the other day that who's blogging what where.
Mhm. And it's a HubSpot thing as well.
And then Technorati also is another blog aggregator that, so you might need to check multiple locations to get things, but in most cases people will submit, like I submitted my blog to all three of those. So you might see the same person blogging in the multiple venues or the multiple aggregators, but then you will also see the heavy hitters blogging.
And what's important here, and the reason I mention this stuff about making these connections, is when you're creating these messages and when you're creating your image, this is where you need to get all your stuff, right? So this is where you'll be able to, that thought leadership and be able to promote kind of, this is what I'm really good at, or this is what people are talking about, did you know? And so this is where we get our stuff from, and so I thought this would be a good way to share that information. Social Media Examiner, if you want to walk them through that?
Social Media Examiner is a great tool. They also send out a daily email, but they've also just recently created a club atmosphere, which is a series of forums. I jumped in early in the beta testing of it, and they now have over 2,000 people in these clubs. There's one on Facebook, there's one on blogging, and one on small business. And you can go in and search the questions that have already been asked, and you can ask a question. And I'll tell you, being a solopreneur, you need some resources, and these people in these forums are great.
I'm going to go ahead and just, where is it? I was gonna add it to the link for you. We'll do that later on. The other one that I have here is Inc. And this is these are trending articles and topics based on your industry on LinkedIn. And what I've found is a lot of cool stuff. So I added, for instance, the how to build. Oh, it's not on there. So I'm going to go ahead and add on this article that I found. But you'll get articles throughout the day, and what I do is I save things based on topics, depending on kind of what is going on and what I'm working on. And so, for instance, on Inc.com, I found this awesome article about building a killer website, 19 do's and don'ts, and it was just super practical, very simple information, and they send stuff like that out all the time, so I became a huge fan, so now I just follow them. And the other thing that you can do, and we'll talk more about this on the next slide, but if you read something you like, follow them on Twitter. That's the number one way I get people that I follow, just based on, hey, I really enjoyed that article, and it's just so amazing to see people respond back to you. Maybe I'm just easily impressed, but it's really interesting to see someone that is, writing for Forbes or writing for Inc. or writing for the Harvard Review to say, hey, awesome, I'm glad you liked it. Happy it was helpful.
They like the kudos every once in a while, too. Another tool that we don't have posted on here is the LinkedIn Today. If you have a LinkedIn profile, they have the news of the day, and they will send out a daily message of what the top headlines are. And depending on what your industry is, you will actually have articles related to you and what you need to know. And I find all sorts of things in there as well. So that's a really good resource to follow and or to watch in your LinkedIn updates.
And Richard, absolutely. That's actually where I was first kind of introduced to Inc.com. They're in LinkedIn Today all the time. So
right.
Very good on you.
The HuffPost does a good job too.
Right. So the other one I have is PR Daily, and it's just same kind of stuff where you just get the resources that you need. And kind of be able to connect with the topics that are going on. So the next slide here is about the people that you should connect to. So we have Mari Smith, And this is Dee's personal favorite, so maybe she can go through some of the different people.
Maria's excellent. She has a couple of different websites. She's all over social media. She offers some free webinars on occasion. She's just, and what I also love about her is her accent, because she's from Australia, I believe. So she's got that, oh, I'm sorry, she's Irish. She's got that great lilt about her voice. A couple of other people that we like is Pete Cashmore. He is Mashable. And Pete Cashmore is not only easy on the eyes, but he has a lot of really good information. Another one that we like is Sarah Evans. I want to be Sarah when I grow up. She actually came from Elgin Community College. She was one of their marketing people, and she lives in Elgin and works from her home, but travels the country talking about social media and finding information. So she's a great resource. We showed her Sarah's faves earlier in the presentation.
So she's the one that has that infograph, and let me tell you, I have stolen plenty of really good stuff from Sarah, so
Yeah.
she's pretty amazing.
Michael Stelzner is from Social Media Examiner. He's a great resource. He writes a daily post and sends that out, and he's the brains behind the social media clubs that he put up on Social Media Examiner. And then Kip Bodner, I like Kip Bodner's writing style, and he has a lot of great articles that he posts on HubSpot, and he actually has an RSS feed that goes out, so you can get a lot of information from him as well. Another one that we don't have a picture of is Jeff Bulla, and it's like a bull with horns with an A at the end. Amy Porterfield is a guru about Facebook. Andrea Vahl is very knowledgeable on on blogging. Lewis Howes is another tool. And then we've got Brian Solis, Jay Baird, Jason Falls, Dave Kerpen, Rich Brooks. There's just so many names that once you start following one of these type of people, you'll get to know who they respect and who they follow. And just, if you're unsure of who you want to follow, go to Twitter, click on Mary Smith, find out who she follows. Go to Pete Cashmore, click on his name, find out who he follows. And
don't follow any of the supermodels, though they won't be very helpful.
No.
Yeah.
But those are the kind of people that they interact with, and those are where those people are the ones that you're going to get your information from.
So a big part of, in the next session we'll talk about, your tools. A big part of your tools in those lists that we were telling you in the beginning to create is knowing who to follow based on topics, based on experts, and based on trends. So Karen's got to get back to work. Well, good thing that we archive this stuff, huh, Karen? So the last part is about measuring impact. So once you've done all that homework and you've kind of established all the things that you want to do, you want to find out, what is your social media, your return on investment. And I found this awesome photo here, and it's they describe it as your efficiency, your reputation, your retention. But what we wanted to emphasize as well is what is the difference between, and it used to be like a play on words, but really it's return on investment versus return on engagement. And so it's really about having a system. And I'll add another article that I've come across, I think Dee sent that one to me, on metrics and the different pillars. And we emphasize some of these in the next slides. But what really boils down to, so now that you've worked on your message and you've worked on your image and you've updated your timeline and then you follow all these people and you're spewing information out, that's so fantastic. Thank you for starting. But now it's really about, okay, how am I monitoring this stuff, right? What kind of analytics am I following? And this is the part where a lot of people start getting lost. Like, okay, like one, I'm done. I was following until I got here, and now I have no idea what you're talking about. You're going to monitor your engagement, and engagement is so many things, including sentiments. You've got, it's some impressions. You've got all these things that we measure. And then reporting. And reporting is basically what your key performance indicators are, right? And so in order to have something to report, you have to have something to measure. So it's about starting your goals. So with that said, when it comes to monitoring, the stuff that I have here is finding out about what people are saying, right? So is it your brand, your product, your service, and not running away. And so Dee, I don't know if you want to jump into that and kind of share.
Many times when you have a brand or a product, you will have naysayers, and you may have somebody who just, especially like if you're in the public eye very highly, you'll have somebody who's a detractor. In most cases, if you're covering your brand and if you're handling your presence on the network, you can take care of those things. And in many, many, many cases, you don't have to because your other followers will. So you don't have to worry about reputation management as much as making sure that you're watching what people are saying. So not only do you have to watch social media, but you have to watch the location-based applications like Yelp or Foursquare or any of the other Google places, any of the places where people can write reviews. You need to make sure that you are watching those as well as Facebook. I know you're all cringing out there saying, oh my God, another thing I have to watch. But if you really want to watch this, you need to keep track. And by doing a Google alert, you will see if your name is mentioned somewhere. I have a Google alert on a couple of the companies that I post for, and I'll watch to see, okay, is this the Texas version of this, or is it something local? If it's the Texas version, I don't have to worry about it, but if it's something that's in Illinois, I read it immediately. So those Google alerts will help you, and then there's other tools that you can use to watch, to monitor what your reputation is doing.
And a lot of this, and I could give my favorite current social media story, but it's really about identifying your threats. So you have to pay attention so you know what people are saying. It's also about dealing with customer service issues, and I was sharing this with Jeannie, but for instance, this past weekend, I was organizing a party, and I had this horrible time trying to get this party booked, and so I was really upset because things kind of it ended up working out in the end, but the restaurant that I was having dinner at was just not very helpful. So what I did is I Yelped them because I was very, very dissatisfied, and so, when in doubt, Yelp. And I'll tell you, all of you, and especially if you're a company, make sure to start a Yelp page so that you can actually manage your own location instead of somebody posting about you. And so what was so interesting is I Yelped them on Monday. The general manager called me on Wednesday on my cell phone. Obviously, they had my information from my reservation, apologizing and making it up to me. So you know what I did? I Facebooked them. Sounds like a very developed conversation, but I Facebooked them because you don't want to share just the bad. I shared the good as well. To say, hey, I'm really proud of your social media customer service protocol, because clearly they read it and they were, concerned enough to get back to me, and then, they reached out. So it's no longer digital. To have the GM of a restaurant call you back, it's really important to monitor, and I was very impressed, and he didn't even know I was getting ready to do a webinar, and I was going to use him on it. But it was perfect. And so the other part is understanding what people are saying about your competitors. And, when the WIA world, our competitors are different states, and so we tend to collaborate more than compete, because we're all trying to do the best that we can.
But aren't you also competing with private HR services?
Correct, and vendors and
right.
providers. And so And so the other part was really about tracking, the different terms that people are using, and this will be a good way for you to develop your searches. And so all of this is about the themes that come up and all the different conversations people are having. So the next one is analytics. And I've added some top ones here, but Google Analytics, Omniture, Tweet Me, PostRank, and then Hootsuite. And all of this stuff, by the way, is now built in as well to all the different tools. I love the Hootsuite Analytics because it'll tell you impressions, it'll tell you what country they came from, age groups, demographics, top.
Hootsuite even sends out a weekly email.
That's right. It gives you your reports. So you don't even have to. That's the one thing you don't have to check.
Yep.
And for those of you that are not familiar with Hootsuite, they're a social media network aggregator product that you can use to kind of manage all that stuff. And we'll have a whole conversation on that later on in the series. And so it's really about, now that you're spending so much effort, we've just spent like an hour and 15 minutes talking about it. Imagine, you want to know that it makes sense, and it's not just, numbers and the different graphs that you get. So what I did is I added here for analytics, the top 3 metrics used by marketers are traffic. Traffic is a big deal for us on Illinois WorkNet. Repeat visits, and then of course followers. And so Dee, I don't know if you want to kind of add on to this.
Well, as I mentioned earlier, in Facebook, if you have 150 followers, you're average. Obviously, if you're a bigger brand or a national brand, you're going to want to have more. But as you're looking at your analytics, you want to try and use maybe Google Analytics on your website to get the numbers that you see. You want to track how long people are staying on your website, where they're coming from. So if you can see, okay, they're coming from Facebook, or they linked in from Twitter, or they linked in from a QR code. Those things are what's going to drive your information and knowledge of where you're going and where they're coming from. You also want to be aware that it's more about the engagement than the investment. So since so much of social media is more just your time, it's hard to measure how you are making sales. What I did read just the other day was that if someone is a fan of yours on Facebook, they are 51% more likely to purchase from you. Marketers equating metrics to actual sales, Richard asked, what you have to do is you have to have those customer service people asking, how did you hear about us? Because right now, social media mention, I think, is the only place that you can get the actual mentions of your brand online through social media. But if you're not tracking it by actually talking to somebody or having them check a box on an online order form, it's still very, very difficult to measure the return on investment for the use of social media. But again, as we mentioned in the first webinar, it's not whether you're going to use it, it's whether or not you already are, and whether or not you're going to be able to sustain business without using it.
Right. And, I mean, just because you are using social media and you've got all these cool metrics in place, it doesn't mean that you don't still do the basics, right? Like your intake process.
Right.
Your contact sheet. Where did you hear about us from? You want to make sure to still stick to your usual tools or process that you would have. And these are the added on options. The other really cool thing, for instance, like I do tons of webinars, and I can tell based on the promotion that I had with my webinar, if they got that information from the button I created, was it the Facebook page, was it the eBrite, was it clicks from our feature rotator. So it's really interesting because then you know what to waste your time on.
And Rich, one more point for everybody else. if you're making landing pages on your website so that if you have an ad on Facebook, they're going to land on a Facebook landing page, or if you have them directed from Twitter, they're going to land on a Twitter landing page. That's also another way to tell whether or not somebody is coming, where they're coming from, and whether or not they're buying from that tool.
Mm-hmm. The last one that I have on here, we talked about this already, is engagement. And so it's all about purpose, right? So you're either doing it to solve your customer service issues, accelerating, promoting your programs, or dealing with PR issues. So getting that information out there for people to be able to kind of get that message. And so a couple of the things that I have on here, on the process that I thought was really cool, and this is from the paper that I included in that web links box. So if you're thinking, okay, what does this process look like for engagement? It's all about your posts. It's about how you deal with negative tones. How do you turn around that impression that someone's created? How to read positive tones, because is there sarcasm? Is there, you really want to be able to know because writing is tough, especially having conversations via text message. It's like the worldwide version of text messaging, right? The influencers, the mentions, that you have, and a question we'll have towards the Q&A is, do you respond to that, or do you just ignore it, or do you just delete it? Worse off, do you delete it off your page, right? And then what do you do, if somebody asks you a question, and especially with Twitter with their direct messages, do you answer? And so this is a really good gauge for you to kind of understand to-do items as to your engagement process. This is what it's going to look like. And then lastly, you'll have your performance indicators. There's my icon. And so performance indicators, and I put this on here, is really about what's most important, because you can make a whole list of everything you care about, and the next bullet I have on here is once you pick your indicators, so if it's going to be mentions, retweets, your traffic, whatever that may be, your impressions, stick to those, and then less is more, because it's going to be really, really hard to maintain. And then once you start tracking those things, don't switch it up. It's really important. You need to have that traction. Really, really important to be able to make heads or tails, and then maybe be able to connect that back to sales or back to whatever your goal is with your social media strategy. So with that said, I'm going to switch over. We have a good 10 minutes for Q&A. I'm going to move us on, and I have a couple questions here for you. The number one thing I'd like you to do right now, and this is very important on my end, is let us know what you think of this webinar. Go ahead and rate us so that we have a good impression of the information that we've provided for you all. So the first question that I have is, are you currently measuring your impact? If so, how? The second question is, how many fans have you gotten and how often? And then, do you check your mentions? This is like the trick question, right? It's like taking your real estate exam. They're all trick questions. If so, do you respond? So I'll give you a minute to ask these questions, and then go ahead and post your questions in the chat pod so we'll get you all started. Don't forget the upcoming webinar on social media tools will be towards the end of March, so stay tuned. I'll include that information in the follow-up email, as well as information on how to get to the archived webinar. I have Maria here that added, I think I created the wrong type of page. I'm curious to see to hear what that means.
Oh, did she do you wanted a local business, but you created something different, right? Maybe something like that.
It's attached. Actually, most of your Facebook pages are going to be attached to your personal account,
Right.
and you'll be the admin, so you're okay for now.
Google Plus now allows admins as well, which is a really nice thing to happen.
Michelle asks, what are mentions? Sorry if I missed this. Mentions are when people mention you or comment or post, so they'll retweet or they'll repost something that you have added on your social media tools. So I'm waiting for people to ask questions. I love Mark. He wrote, very good information. Now I have to go out on the web and use them. That's right. And you know what? You can go ahead and connect to both Dee and I. You have my information and you have Dee's LinkedIn information. Go ahead and your first call to action is going to be to add us on LinkedIn.
Oh.
And
But everybody needs to personalize their invitation. Please don't just use the generic request.
that's something that Dee drills into everyone's psyche as she's teaching her LinkedIn webinars, workshops. And so go ahead and add us. That's your first call to action. And then I'll wait and see if anybody has any calls or questions. Oh, very cool, Jim. Well, you let us know if you need help. We know a thing or two about creating an online presence, so.
Jim, did you get the social media audit that was attached to the first webinar information?
It's also in the file share, so you're more than welcome. I left it in there so people could grab all those resources. All you do is click on the file name and then save it to your computer. So.
A. Stevens asks, how do you add links on your Facebook cover image? You can no longer add links on your cover page. You can do it on your welcome page still.
Eva asks, we have limited staff time for social media. Where do we maximize bang for our buck?
Where are your customers? That's, it depends on what your business is. In most cases, if you're a B2C, Facebook, and I mean business to customer, Facebook is going to be your biggest tool, or YouTube. If you're a B2B, which is business to business, LinkedIn and YouTube are probably going to be your biggest ones.
Right. And Eva, especially with the different clients that we all have, the customers, many of them will be on Facebook. I think it's most useful, especially with our workshops and job clubs and all of that. I would emphasize doing Facebook just because I know kind of how that all plays out. So that's my recommendation.
Richard, you are your brand. So if you build your LinkedIn profile, that will help you. Facebook now has branch out and be known so that you can build those. Just clean up your Facebook personal profile if you're looking for a job right now.
And the other thing for those of you, because Richard that asked about rebranding in your career? One, you have a couple of different links in your web links that I shared. One is about this awesome video that talks about how successful people sell themselves. That's about creating your personal brand. I also added another article in there about creating your personal brand in the sense of like, how do I define myself? How do I communicate those skills? And then you have an entire webinar that we did last week that will get posted on kind of how to do your pitch and all those things, and that was through gaining employment at a job fair. So make sure to check on the Illinois WorkNet on the business pathway under business services for all the social media stuff. And then if you need to see the gaining employment one, I'll be more than happy to send that to you. You see some good posts here with people building their brands.
And if anybody else is interested, I have my most recent blog post on my timetomarket.com site is all of the resources that I found about creating your timeline presence. There's a video link. There's a couple of different well-known bloggers that wrote some things. So I kind of aggregated all of that together.
Teresa asks, can you please repeat what you were saying about Facebook for individuals who are transitioning? I have a LinkedIn profile already. Actually, the biggest thing for Facebook with people, with job seekers, is just being able to be mindful of the image that you're putting out there. And knowing that people will, if you're applying for something, they're going to Google you, so they're going to, whatever, you may be John Smith and then they won't have a clue, but if they Google Juana Maria, there's not many of those. So it's really important to have appropriate pictures, use your privacy settings well so that you emphasize or highlight what you want, and then be mindful that there are lots and lots of recruiters screening through Facebook. So hopefully you're not doing any beer bombs as your profile picture, and I think you'll be okay. So if we don't have any other questions, I really appreciate your interest. Thank you so much, Dee. She actually physically came to this webinar, so it's fantastic. And we will post all of this up as a follow-up, and I hope that you will be interested in attending the upcoming webinar towards the end of the month. So we appreciate your interest. Have a great day.
Bye.
The meeting is now over. All the participants have been disconnected.